further ado, let's move on to our first keynote session of the day with the topic of future of cyber and physical security. Let me first invite Mr. Deval Sheth. He's the Managing Director, Asia Pacific, Utimaco, GmbH. And let me introduce to you our speaker of the session, Mr. John Young. He's the ex-InfoComm Development Authority, Ministry of Communication and Information from Singapore government. Over to you, Mr. Sheth.
Okay. Good morning, friends. I hope you had a wonderful event yesterday and a wonderful and meaningful sessions. As we start day 2 of the event, there cannot be a better way to start the session by, and I have the privilege to introduce this keynote speaker. John Yong is a cyber guru. He's a former director of the InfoComm Security Group, formerly known as IDA, and currently known as GovTech. He's also an advisor and member of numerous enterprises and organizations, not only in Singapore, but across many organizations globally. He's also a visiting lecturer to several universities and has served as a senior fellow of cybersecurity think tank RSIS NTU, and was also on the board of SUTD. John has been practicing cybersecurity for over 40 years. So while a lot of us are novices in this subject, John has been doing this for a very, very long time, investing several governments and several private corporations on their cybersecurity policies and on various tools and technologies. Without any further delay, I welcome John Yong to this keynote address. And it's our privilege to have you here. So welcome, John, and over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Deval. I just want to thank you for that very kind words. First of all, I'd like to do a quick sound test. Is the volume okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Well, first of all, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. I'm now giving you a quick short talk out of Singapore from our office, which is in our afternoon. So first, let me thank Internet and Mobile Association of India for inviting me to give this a quick opening about is there a future for cyber and physical security? It's an interesting topic. I hope I could share some part of my past experiences with you and some of the current observation, and hopefully some of these pointers could be useful for your future work. Let me quickly touch on a few things. So my next 20 minutes, I probably will touch on 4 things. I'd like to quickly share an observation about a trend, some new threat that we are seeing in this part of the world, Asia Pacific, in the region. And I'd like to highlight some of the new investment that I'm seeing in the fintech community. And being a board member in several companies, I also like to highlight and share some of the new thinking of board membership and how they want to run the topic on cybersecurity. What trend in place is actually quite exciting. We are seeing many digital transformation in all kinds of businesses. In particularly, if you look at some of the InfoComm infrastructure, whether it's telco, whether it's electricity, whether it's finance, these CIIs are changing the way they do the business. And many of them have started to introduce massive amount of digitization or IT and OT into the businesses. At the largest order, I think we started to see city-state, they're transforming themselves. I think most all the government in the region, in Asia, in ASEAN, are trying to promise a citizen that they can be provided with a better quality of living, and therefore a smart city. I would call it a smarter city. Now, these are all spells a good opportunity for digitization to take place in our own city-state respectively. And the speed is actually quick, fast, and furious. Among them, I think we see, sorry, I think there's a small change. We realize a few things. In this digitization process, we realize a few things that will happen. First, we see many small component. If you decompose the digital transformation, you see many small parts that will take place in this digitization. And one of the tall order and the challenges is how do we adopt them and how do we use them correctly, and therefore to achieve the business efficiency or productivity. And this is actually an important part of the ecosystem. And the successful enterprise will need to learn to manage multiple, if not hundreds of these technology pieces and in attempt to put them together. And one of the important elements would be, do you have a good grasp over this pool of vendors who are supporting you in your digitization effort? Another trend which is becoming more important in the recent years is the regulator. Whether it is a regulator for the financial sector, regulator for the telco, regulator for the energy, for the transport, they started to pay more attention in addition to your infrastructure resiliency. They wanted most of the CII operators to deal with the data privacy. I think citizen data privacy is becoming a key concern by many of the government, and many of the upgraded regulatory framework. You started to see more and more cybersecurity and privacy component either being introduced in one piece or being introduced in multiple pieces. Well, with new digitization, I think we started to see new threats. My favorite call out is always, what are the key concerns by the technical people, by the CEO, by the board, by the management? I think there are various threats that is in front of us. One of the key concerns at the highest order, I always shout out, is that do we have sufficient protection? Do we do it with the right priority? Now, the sufficiency is actually a difficult marker or benchmark to try to attain, because there's never enough cybersecurity protection. And in the limited budget that we have, in the limited resources that we have, we need to prioritize them. And do we have the right priority? And to do this correctly, we need to understand how to do a proper risk management. So therefore, maybe later on, I will talk a bit about some investment that we need to handle that in a correct manner. The third one, which I thought is more important, many of us are actually concerned with data lake. Cybersecurity threat center around the 3D. I put an article on this several years back. It's about defacement, DDoS attack, and data leak. Data leak by far is one of the largest so-called concern by many of the enterprise. And this is becoming wider, bigger. And with all the extortion and ransomware that's happening around us in the recent months, we started to realize that this cyber attack becoming faster, more targeted, and more furious. And the damages could be damaging. Example about your electricity outbreak in US and India, call for a CII operator to take their cybersecurity risk more seriously. Well, threat is actually dangerous. I think the more difficult part is how do we invest some of this protection in the right way. I'd like to call out three things. I think there are more that we need to talk about. New investment means budget. One of the difficult part of the discussion with many new technology that you want to handle is how much budget you can set aside to do the risk management, to do the digital protection. All the digital asset in time to come will need to be protected correctly. And I'm not going to call it IT budget, I'm going to call it digital budget. The digital budget will include both cyber and non-cyber. And for the security component, I'm advocating anything between 6 to 8% of your digital budget to be set aside for the security protection. Singapore government in the last year budget when the government expenditure is in the excess of 80 over billion, we have announced that we will set aside 1 billion for the next 3 years to be invested on security protection. On the commercial sector, on the enterprise sector, I'm seeing anything between 5 to 6% of the IT budget being set aside for the IT protection, and 10% OT security to be set aside for OT protection. Now, where can this investment go to, and where can you get the best benefit out of it? I see 3 things that are people investing using the cybersecurity for the next new wave of digitization. 1, I'm seeing a aggressive KYC being taken place. Now, the KYC is actually an important word. I think in the financial sector, it calls for understanding whether the right people is logging into the system and whether the transaction is valid. If you look at the various way of doing this KYC, in addition to the multi-factor, you also need to set up a multiple channel, particularly in commerce. How can you be sure that every transaction, every channel that you set up between you and the customer are secure? You actually call for complex PKI, you actually call for complex certificate management. And this is to allow you to protect and know who you're dealing with and ensure that your digital asset is being protected. There are some element of AI that are being talked about, but I do not see AI as a big thing. One of the important AI that is being used to do digital protection is actually to automate some of the massive volume of security examination that's needed. So AI is becoming a means or tool to replace human mind to do it. The last part of it, we are seeing a lot of digital banking that's happening. In some of the tech people, they call it crypto, some of them call it blockchain. In short, I think we are seeing bank transforming itself from a physical brick and mortar bank to become a virtual bank or digital bank. Now, this will be investment that many of them are looking into it over the past couple of years. With the new technology, we probably need to ensure that we have enough management control. One of the things which we are struggling with is that there is insufficient management guidance, insufficient direction that's been set by the board about how to deal with cybersecurity. In Singapore, the stock exchange has actually instituted that board of directors is accountable as part of the enterprise risk to include cybersecurity risk. So it's no longer just traditional operational risk. Cyber is being called out as a risk on its own. So with that in mind, the board member need to have sufficient knowledge about how to deal with governance risk and control with the correct perspective. One way to deal with it, which this has been practiced by many of the larger enterprise, is to re-examine the way we deal with the ERM. The enterprise risk management is a framework that allows you to put focus into key risks, and cyber becoming one of the key risks that's in the ERM. The second is actually about a question of compliance. Many of us ask about whether do we need to do what we want to do, and the need to protect, or should we save the protection, and if there's nothing happen, then why are we wasting that investment? The difficult part of it is the sufficiency is always closely tied to the regulatory framework, and the regulatory framework need to be measured correctly, and this is actually not a fixed method. And I'm seeing some AI-driven audit processes that's being kicked in. In other words, the problem about whether we know what is happening is an important attribute the management want to know. Management want to know 3 things. Can we predict what might go wrong? I call that T-1. And I have a concern over T equal to 0 means if something were to happen to my enterprise, some attack is to happen to my enterprise, do I get to know them fast enough? I don't want to wait till auditor tells me 1 year later. I don't want a monthly management report. I want to know it now. Can we do that? But I often say that no enterprise can stop a cyber attack. The only thing we could do is to prepare ourselves for the eventuality to set up our response capability to deal with what need to be done. Now, after hearing the T minus 1 T with a 0 T plus 1, you probably realize that there's a lot of questions as a board member you need to ask. The first question the board chair will need to ask is, do I have board members in my board that understand cyber physical security enough so as to guide the board in making the right decision? Among the board member, they will have to understand whether or not this risk does exist and whether or not how much it has impacted the business. So in the board, you actually have sub-board committee, whether it's audit committee, risk committee, they will have to deal with this risk quite holistically. At the management end, we often ask, where should I put the investment? Do I have enough skill set? Do I have enough ability to detect if there's any attack? One of the things which I like to ask, if I may, practicing this for many years, is an avocation of cybersecurity attack. We cannot stop any attack from happening to my enterprise. There's no vendor that can do that as well. Many of them could help you to detect faster, and many of them could help you to respond better. So one of the key attributes the board will need to ask, are we prepared for any of such cybersecurity attack? I think this can be done technically, professionally in many ways. Now, these are some of the key new management which we believe we need to ask ourselves. Should you be given a chance to relook into how you want to deal with the cyber physical concern over the years, this could be a good starting point. I'd like to quickly sum up. We all now believe that digital trend is unstoppable. We cannot deny that ICT, IT, OT is actually changing the way we do our business. It actually has great impact to our quality of life if we can do it better, faster. But with all this new technology, we also realize that the threat is becoming more dangerous. We are seeing threat actors more targeted, more focused, with greater velocity to attack their targeted enterprise. And with that in mind, one of the important things is that we need to set aside sufficient resources and budget to deal with the new technology or new investment. And this cannot be seen as after the thought. Unless you have a good plan, you probably will miss some of the component, and the weakest link can only hurt you more. So I urge you to set up a plan. I urge you to have a budget set aside to deal with security protection for many good things that you are seeing in the enterprise. Last but not least, I think we need to look at the way we handle the guidance and direction. One of the important things, if you happen to be sitting in board, it'll be important that you surface, if not ask. If you are a chair, it'll be good to ask if I have board members that understand cyber physical security, or do I have the management team that is ready and to take the accountability of cybersecurity. One of the interesting one that we have done recently is we actually put cybersecurity as a key KPI for the CEO. If he never do the cybersecurity properly, he don't get the bonus or the long-term bonus. His long-term bonus was shrunk because he didn't protect the enterprise. Now, these are important consideration. I don't think many a company that I've seen, I have noticed that they actually set cybersecurity into the overall CEO remuneration. It is an idea. I'm not sure whether any of the speaker later on will talk about this, but I believe you have a very good lineup of technical topics. So I encourage you to learn about them so as to know which are the investment you could put in place to protect your digital environment better. Thank you. I hope that is a good, a quick outline of what I think we can see in this part of the world. And hopefully some of the pointers is useful for your consideration. Deval, I'll pass the time back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you very much for those wonderful insights. And, I'm sure many CEOs or future CEOs, will be keen to know their cybersecurity score of their organization. And if it's linked to their bonuses or their variable payment plan or to their stock options, it'll definitely bring accountability right from the top. I have, we have some questions from the audience, and I would like to address them to you with your permission. Two questions. Question number one is, how do you see, cyber reporting, fraud reporting, or a cyber crime reporting? The distinction between cybercrime and cyber fraud reporting, and how do various stakeholders, be it regulators or governments, can facilitate this in an easier manner to have an addressal to this. So this was the first question. Maybe you would like to share your views on the same.
Sure. The eventuality of any of the cyber race has different impact. In my past years of so-called practicing this topic, I think cybersecurity is being discussed at a different level. At the highest order, I call it the state-sponsored attack. These are typically the people in the military. That's in red. That's in green, sorry. Below the state-sponsored attack, what I can see that's important is called cybercrime. So typically, these are the people who are in blue. These are typically the police, who is called a criminal activity, something that if it's above the bar, that means lawfully not allowed, then the police will handle. There's something below the law, which is called cyber disturbance. It's like a cyber bully. If there is a I cut away your internet, I took away your so-called, I disturb your infrastructure a little, which is not criminal, maybe not intentional. I call that a cyber disturbance. Now, the cyber disturbance can be addressed if you have a cyber resiliency framework, and this is what I call the normacy. Now, if you look at this, it actually involves different regulator or different government agency. The highest order is the military, which is the defense. The second level, which is the police, which is the home affair. Then the disturbance is actually the regulator, because they have to set the regulation to ensure system can be working at the right level. Fraud is a complicated one. If a fraudulent transaction is deemed to be illegal, then yes, you have to involve the police. If the fraudulent transaction is just a theft or a cheating between the two companies, then as an enterprise, you can decide whether or not you want to report to the police. Let me give a quick highlight about situation that I noticed about the financial sector. As a bank, as a financial sector, you have difficult challenges. If you have a fraud or you have a cybersecurity incident, if you see a cybercrime happening, do you report to the regulator? Do you report to the police? Or do you do nothing? This is a difficult one. If you want to report to the police, you have to involve your legal. If you want to report to the central bank, then you need to make sure you work with your compliance officer, because at the end of the day, it's about compliance. So I would suggest, if you have a chance to deal with the issue, attempt to classify the situation and then decide on the best approach using a playbook. So one of the important things is to set up a T+1 playbook, so you know exactly what to do when the situation arises. Hopefully that gives you some idea, Eva. Thank you for the question.
No, thank you. I think our time is up. There are quite a few more questions coming, but I'm not sure if we have the time to answer them.
Okay.
There is one question on, does cyber insurance have a future in governing cybersecurity? Okay. Maybe a quick 30-second answer, and then maybe we can wrap up the session.
Okay. So let me talk about cyber insurance. So I love the topic. I sit in the government advisory board to try to set up a cybersecurity insurance. Now, cyber insurance is actually a risk mitigation instrument. where you try to claim some of the damages from a third party. The only challenge we see is that most of the insurance provider doesn't have a clear-cut definition about what they want to undertake. If you look at the actuarial sign at the back, all the insurance company have a different way of dealing with their risk profile. Unfortunately, I have yet to see a good risk pool that we can aggregate all the insurance money to set up a proper insurance scheme in anywhere in the world yet. I've seen a good risk pool for medical, risk pool for vehicle, but I don't think there are enough data on cybersecurity risk pool to attract a proper cybersecurity insurance. If you're thinking about setting up a cybersecurity insurance as a mean to mitigate, answer is yes, but I urge you to define your scope of work and look at the insurance, how they want to mitigate your risk so that you can enter into the correct agreement. There's a lot of good references on that, and this is actually a topic on its own. But
Yeah.
You'll be interesting.
Correct. No, thanks, John. I think thank you for your insights and thank you for the time and thank you for your keynote. It was a pleasure hearing you. It was pleasure facilitating this, and thank you very much. And we wish you all the best and a good day ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Sheth, and a special thanks to Mr. Yang for joining us for this session. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our partners, our session partner Refinitiv, our gold partners Ricta, Netherlands Embassy, and Cybersprint. Please stay tuned for another exciting discussions. Thank you, everyone. We are signing off.